Greetings, my fellow Earthlings. Welcome to today's video. Everything I own is broken. I guess we will start at the beginning with my favorite vehicle I own that also hasn't ran in the last 5 years, the Volvo.
So the big issue with the Volvo, as you can see, there's already quite a bit of stuff missing from this area. The engine blew up at 260,000 miles. It leaked oil faster than I could put oil into it. So, long story short, that one's toast. It's been open to the elements for years. It's not worth trying to salvage that engine. So I need a whole engine, but not just that. The transmission had some issues too before it went. All the electronics had some issues. My whole goal with this lovely turd, for lack of a better word, I need an entire donor car. I need an entire car to just rip everything off of, to throw onto this car to get it in a running state again, which, you know, any logical person would hear that and be like, just buy a new fucking car. And I agree with them. I want this car, my car, to run. Any logical person would see the condition of this car. There's no interior, no engine, somewhat of a transmission, it's very iffy, no speedometer, no rate. I've gutted almost everything out of this car. One, because I wanted to. Me and my hubris, I wanted to put a cage in this thing, and you know, all that stuff, which I still want to do. But the point I'm trying to make is, I love this thing. Any logical person, again, they would have scrapped this thing a long time ago, but there's more value in this car to me than just scrapping it for the $200 I would get, because it's only worth its value in scrap. It's trash. I'm admitting it. It's a trash vehicle. There's nothing usable on it, but I want to fix it. I want to drive this thing down the road. Yes, in this horrible condition, but it's just down to the wire. It's not about the interior of this car. It's not about the quality of the drive of this car. It's the car itself. I'm just obsessed with this thing, and it's always been my goal ever since this thing broke to fix it and to drive it down the road. And every year I've said to myself, okay, this is the year. This is the year. We're doing it. We're gonna get this thing running. I'm dead set on it now. This is going to be the year this thing runs. And I say that because back when this broke, I did not have the knowledge, I did not have the tools, I did not have the time, and I did not have the money. So that's the 4 things going against me. And since then, since my experiences in life, I now have the knowledge. Should have most of the tools. I have knowledge, tools, time, sure, and money. I have everything else. I now have enough know-how and enough knowledge to be able to do it now. I know what I'm doing, sort of. And I'm tired of not driving this vehicle, and having all of my vehicles break on me. That's lit the fire again. That's lit the, not only do I want all my vehicles running, I want this vehicle running. I want to be able to drive all my vehicles at any point that I want to. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening. It's gonna happen after I get the bike back and after I get the Fiat back. Because I need to have some vehicles, and as important as the Volvo is to me, it's going on the back burner right now because it's gonna take the most amount of work, and it doesn't currently run in its form. Whereas the other 2 vehicles did run, sort of, they just have major issues. It's happening. It's happening. We're gonna start making big moves on the Volvo and getting it to move under its own power. It will never be finished. I'm just gonna start that. Like, it's not gonna become some show quality thing overnight. The goal is to literally just have it move under its own power and be able to go down the road. That's all I'm asking from it for 2024.
A tale that everyone might not relate to, but I definitely feel like some people have been in this boat where they had a vehicle and they loved that vehicle, but when it broke, you know, when it literally couldn't run anymore, they didn't know how to fix it. So some people might have gave up right there. Some people might have gone down the path that I did and learn how to fix things, learn how to fix vehicles in the hopes that one day you'll be able to fix this vehicle. So I don't know. I don't know. So I'm just along for the ride on obviously not my bike again for the third time. We're gonna get to that story though, because up next on the list is a vehicle very near and dear to my heart that a lot of people don't understand. They don't get why I like this vehicle so much. It's gonna be my Fiat, my 500 Abarth. Now, what's going on with that thing? Let's find out.
So as you can tell, it is currently still a vehicle, but it's taken apart right now. And this isn't going to be a very in-depth review because I already got the new transmission in because, you know, it's right here. I'm at work, so transmission's already in. I already put the subframe back in. It's all going back together because I need to drive this car. I mean, this is the daily right now, so I kind of need it put back together. So that's what I'm doing right now, but I can, however, show you the carnage in this box over here. So this is the old transmission that I've taken apart into pieces. Let's see here. Let's see if we can do it one-handed. Probably not. I'm gonna set that down. This is my transmission, and the part that broke is down here. That is the drive gear for first gear and reverse, and yeah, there's no gear anymore, so all just in the parts I needed to rebuild this, it was cheaper to buy a whole transmission, a used transmission, but it was cheaper to go that route, so that's the route I went, and now have this. And up next is now the Fiat. So, ended up with the Fiat after I wrecked my Iron 883 Sportster. This was the closest thing I could get to another motorcycle, and I mean, my whole life has changed because of this car. I love this car. Through a series of events, I lost first gear and reverse. Obviously, it's not... I had to fix it. So, yep. As of me recording this, there is the new transmission currently in there already. I'm buttoning it all back up together. So, by the time this video releases, this is probably going to be running again. I thought the bike would be the first thing running, but yeah, that's kind of how things go.
For everything that it's worth, the Fiat is the most reliable vehicle I've owned. Even in its current state, the Fiat got me home. I drove it without first gear and reverse. It still made it home. If that's not a sign of how good Fiat is, I don't know what is. As much as people make fun of me for this crappy little Italian Econobox, I love the Fiat. But I knew this day would come. I knew this day was going to come, and that's not the only reason I got the Harley, but I just had a feeling. I'm like, the Fiat's too reliable. Something is going to go wrong eventually. And sure enough, it did. So a little ahead of time, because I didn't know what was going to happen, a little ahead of time, I picked up my Road Glide, which, you know, multiple purposes. One, I knew the Fiat was going to go down at some point. I missed motovlogging. I missed what I'm doing right now, hanging with friends, meeting new friends, being with all these people I enjoy being with. But long story short, I knew the writing was on the wall. Not that the Fiat's totaled or anything, it's just I knew it was going to be broken in a way that I couldn't drive it. Like, that hasn't happened yet. So I got the Road Glide, and the idea was the Road Glide was going to be the reliable backup, but that hasn't that hasn't necessarily happened, you know. It hasn't been the smoothest of roads.
And so that leads us to right this very second of me recording this video, which as of this moment, I still don't have the bike. I've purposefully not really talked about what's been going on with the bike because one, I wanted it to be like an actual video, but it's been months. It's been months without me having my motorcycle that I just got. And long story short, it's being taken care of. It will be running. It was promised to me 2 weeks ago, and I'm grateful for the friends that I have that have helped me along in this process to get me a repaired bike. But let's start going through a timeline of events with the bike, why I got this bike, why I wanted this bike, and what led to right now. So I've been wanting a motorcycle since my accident, and I finally got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can get a motorcycle comfortably and not screw myself over. I didn't buy a motorcycle outright. I did still finance it, and I know people feel a certain way about financing motorcycles, but it is an option. It's the option I took that made the sense. It made sense for me where I am currently. Would I have preferred to buy a motorcycle outright instead of having to make payments on it? Of course, who doesn't want to pay for something outright? But dedicated payments on this thing that I want, it just makes sense for me. It makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense for everyone, but that's just the way I wanted to go with it. So why a 2006 Road Glide? Normally in this lineage, you would expect me to go to a Softail or maybe a Dyna. But here's where I'm breaking convention a little bit. I was never into Harley, really. It wasn't like... I had no feelings going into this. I just was a complete outsider to motorcycling, and I'm like, okay, what can I get? Harley is the easiest to work with, to finance with. Harley is just a really good company to work with. Say what you want about the bikes, and I am in that crowd. I do prefer a whole host of other motorcycles over Harleys, but on the other face of that same coin, there is a novelty to Harley Davidsons. They're goofy, I like them, they are fun. That's the other thing. This is going off on so many different side notes, and I'm gonna lose track. I have this little list in front of me, so I don't lose track completely, but people take everything way too seriously. At the end of the day, everyone's all doing the same things. Bikes are bikes, you know. Anyway, why a twin cam Road Glide? That's what I always liked. I didn't like the newer Road Glides from a looks perspective, from a weight perspective. I don't know if it's true, I don't know if it's placebo. The twin cam Road Glide platform, the touring bikes, the twin cam touring bikes feel smaller. They feel more controllable. It feels like they have more personality going on with them. I just like the twin cam touring bikes more than the Milwaukee 8 touring bikes. And I also can't afford Milwaukee 8 touring bikes right now. I just always liked the way a Road Glide looks over the Street Glide. I don't like the weight of the fairing on the handlebars versus the fixed fairing of a Road Glide. That's just the bike I always wanted. Twin cam Road Glide. And I found exactly that at the dealership that I preferred to go to because that's where my friends went to do business. My friends worked there. It was all coming together. It all made sense. Here's this bike that I really like at a price I could afford at the dealership that all my friends went to, that my friends worked at. It all made sense. And then the issues started happening. So I get the bike, get it all squared out, and then I wait a few days after officially signing the paperwork, getting it all squared up, because I wanted to ride it home. That was the whole thing. You know, I wanted to take the celebratory ride home instead of having it shipped to me. The whole thought was one of my friends was going to drop me off at the dealership, and then I ride my bike to work. So we do just that. I get to the dealership, and I start on the journey to work. And if you're familiar with Central Florida, I-275 going into Tampa from St. Pete is a nightmare at all times of day and night, but especially during noon and around like 4 to 6 to 7. Those are the worst times to be on I-275. You do not want to be there. And I was on I-275 right at noon. right in the smack middle of the lunch rush. The bike was not happy. The idle kept getting slower and slower. Heat was just pouring off the thing. It was doing bad. And at that point, the engine light came on, the oil light came on. The whole bike was just not doing it. So I found the closest exit I could get off at to just, get some air flowing onto the bike just to actually get it breathing again. And it just was not having it. The oil light was on 24/7. Every time I came to a stop, the idle again would get really low to like a stalling point. And if I turned the bike off, it did not want to turn back on. So I made the executive decision to go home instead of trying to get to work. I was not turning around and going to St. Pete back on I-275. I would not have made it. So I make it home, I drive to work, I call up the dealership, and I'm like, hey, I just had this issue. So they pick the bike up, they replace the oil pressure sensor, I think? They replaced a sensor. I don't remember what sensor, but they replaced a sensor, and they said, this is best case scenario, for all parties involved. So I'm like, okay, get the bike back. Oil light isn't on anymore, engine light isn't on anymore. And I go in my happy way. Start taking it to work, everything's going fine. 4 days later, it's a little wet out, it's raining. That might have a contributing factor to it, but I'm done with work for the day. I get on the bike, I start to head home from work, and the starter starts kicking itself on while I'm riding. But at first, I didn't know what was going on. All I hear is this gut-wrenching noise, so I turn the bike off, I'm coasting. I put it in neutral, turn the bike off, I'm just coasting down the road. I'm like, okay. I turn the ignition back on. I don't start the bike, I don't hit the starter, I just turn the ignition back on, and immediately the starter's running on its own. You can hear it just bouncing off the flywheel. That's how a car works. I don't know if that's how a bike works, but the starter's just kicking itself on. It's hitting things it's not supposed to hit because the bike's moving, so the gears can't line up. It's just a horrible thing. So I pull over, I call a tow truck on my insurance, so I didn't have to pay that much. I get it towed to my house, and I call up the dealership again. I'm like, hey, I need help. So they grabbed the bike, and this time I had to pay for the repairs. So they did give me a discount. They put me under employee pricing because, again, I have friends. But even with the employee discount on the labor and the parts, I was still out $880 something, $890, right under $900 to fix that issue. There were more repairs done than just that, but ultimately just under $900 of a repair on a bike I just got. This was in the same month, I believe. Like, I didn't even make it a full month with the bike before I already had to spend $1,000 on it. No, I'm not gonna say that yet. So it all gets repaired, I get the bike back again, and at this point I don't really trust it, so I'm not riding it as much, and I notice the oil light keeps coming back on. It comes and goes, and sometimes the bike would be performing just fine, other times it would start to get the slow idle again, it would start to just not feel right. So I didn't want to take it back to the dealership again because I just had to pay for this repair. I knew whatever this was going to be, they were probably going to ask me to pay it again. So I made the decision I was going to take it apart myself and start looking at it. I knew going into this twin cams, their biggest flaw is the cam chain tensioner. Mine is a 2006, which was the last year of the spring style versus the hydraulic one. So I knew mine had an issue with I didn't know that my bike specifically had an issue yet. I just knew it had the bad tensioners. So I get some oil, I get a cam plate cover gasket, and I drain the oil. I take the bike apart, or I take the cam plate off, and that's when I noticed the cam chain tensioners are bad.
The outer one isn't too bad. There was some wear on it, and the inner one was very close to failing. So I was like, okay, I'll fix it myself. I did a little bit of research. I would love to have just thrown a hydraulic cam chest at it, you know, the cam plate conversion to make it hydraulic tensioners, or a gear drive. I would have loved to do that right at that very moment, but I just had to pay for a $1,000 repair on top of a bike that I just got and put money down on. I was kind of strapped for cash right now because I don't want to. This was not bought as a mechanic special, cash only, you know, start throwing parts at it to get it running. I'm financing this damn thing. I shouldn't be having to do this, and I already exhausted my spare money in this thing that I just got. So with the research that I did, I decided that I was just going to replace the cam shoes with an aftermarket company's cam shoes. Psycho Gaskets. They make a replacement boot tensioner out of a different material that holds up a lot better than the material Harley was using towards the later end of Twin Cam 88. When they went to the 96 and the 103, they completely revised it because they knew it was an issue to hydraulic ones that didn't wear as bad. But this is the shoe that I was going to install. I bought the kit, and just replace the shoes, call it a day. So I start taking the bike apart more. I go to pull the cam plate out. If you know anything about twin cams, when you undo the bolts for the cam support plate, you can leave the oil pump in, and then the whole thing is just supposed to slide out. So I get to that point, I leave the oil pump on the cam plate, take all the bolts out, I go to slide it out, it's not budging. Here is a video of it happening right here. This thing isn't supposed to do this, it's just supposed to slide right out, and mine's not doing that. So the only part of the bike that was still connected to the cam plate is the rear cam bearing. So I decided to just take a pry bar to it and just pop it off forcefully, and that's when I discovered that the rear cam bearing had failed. You could see flat spots on all the needle bearings, you could see the scoring on the rear cam from where the bearing seized and wasn't spinning anymore and just eating away at the cam. So I was probably less than 100 miles away from a catastrophic engine failure given the circumstances. So at this point, I'm feeling neglected. I'm like, okay, this bike was not inspected, you know, this is unacceptable. I didn't want to take it back to the dealership because I was going to have to pay for this. So I was completely prepared to just let the bike sit while I save up money to address the issues. When my friends started reaching out, they're like, hey, you know, come on this ride with us. You know, when are you getting your bike back together? I'm like, I can't. It's fucked. So I called the dealership, but I specifically asked to speak with a specific person instead of, you know, just service or whoever, to discuss the issues I've been having with the bike. So I basically give them, I wouldn't say my whole life story, but I tell them everything that went on with the bike and the most recent issue with it and how I'm feeling neglected. I'm like, hey, this was not, I didn't buy this bike from you guys, or let me rephrase that. I did not finance this bike from you guys with the understanding that I was gonna have to completely rebuild this whole thing. Like, that's not how financing a bike works. If it was a mechanic special, cash only, we wouldn't be here right now, but this isn't one of those bikes, so we kind of have an issue right now. I was quoted $9,000 to rebuild that engine, which, following that, they said, which they weren't gonna do, because that's not a feasible option for the bike, that I actually got for less than that. So rebuilding the engine was not an option. So at this point, my three unofficial options were trade out of the bike, get a used engine swapped in it, or get my money back and just go somewhere else. The issue with number one, and this is the option that literally everyone was telling me to do, everyone, and I mean everyone was telling me, get the fuck out of that bike, get a different bike. Here's the dilemma, here's the issue. Like I said, I don't really care about Harley. I don't like all of their bikes. I don't care for Softails. I don't care for Dynas. I don't want another Sportster as a main bike. I want my Sportster back. another quick side story. After my bike was totaled, it was bought from an insurance auction. It was fixed in Fort Lauderdale. The guy who fixed it tried to sell it back to me, but I couldn't afford it, so it was bought, and it is currently now in its third owner in Miami. I've tracked it down somewhere. I haven't pinpointed who has it yet, but I want my Sportster back. That narrows it down to touring bikes. And again, the price that I'm not disclosing that I got this Road Glide for, there's not much. My only real option in this price range was going to be Electroglides, and I already explained how I don't like the Batwing fairing. I don't like the weight of the fairing on the handlebars. I don't really like that. So that leaves Road Kings. And I just wanted a twin cam Road Glide. That's what I wanted. That is the Harley I wanted. And trading out of that bike into something in that same price range that I got the Road Glide for, I couldn't do it. There would be nothing. I got the bike I wanted. That was the issue. This bike that I set as like the goal for myself, this bike I wanted, I got, and here we are now. So option 2, putting a used engine in the bike, we'll touch on that in a second. Option 3, getting my money back and going somewhere else. It is possible I could have gotten something else completely. Actually, in that story, before the Road Glide, I almost got a Victory Cross Country, but just where I was at the time, I couldn't make it work. I would have took on the payments and not have been able to do it. The payments would have been literally like the exact same that I'm at right now with this Road Glide. I pretty much got the Road Glide for the exact same price that the Victory Cross Country was at. And I know I said the whole thing about I don't like the Batwing fairings, I don't like the weight of the fairings on the handlebars. Ah man, the Victory Cross Country is the exception for me, because I love the way that bike looks. But like I said, at the time, I couldn't make it work. I knew I would have been treated right at some point. Like, I didn't want to just, hey, fuck you guys, I can't believe you did this to me, give me back my money, and get something else. There are a lot of bikes I like, but they're all way out of my price range right now. This is the bike. I found the bike that I wanted, and I had it. So that leaves us with option number 2, getting a used engine put into the bike, which not after some back and forth. This was never actually set in stone. Like, this was never a definitive, what do you as the customer want? I mean, he did talk to me, and I did tell him, like, which route I wanted to go, but we never sat down in person or whatever and, like, talked about it. It's just, there was some weeks of silence, I didn't hear anything, and then I got a phone call saying, hey, we're throwing a bike in the engine. We're throwing an engine in the bike, you're not paying a dime, we're gonna get this right. So, very happy about that, very grateful for that. Now, on that note though, it has been a very long time, it's been months without this bike. I've been trying to do content in the meantime, like with those test rides and stuff, but there's not really much I can do. I mean, there's a lot I can do, but when I had the whole goal set on motorcycle content, just to have my motorcycle taken away from me, you're kind of at limbo. So I've been patiently waiting in the meantime. A lot of friends have been letting me borrow their bikes for rides and content, and I'm greatly appreciative for that. I really am. But at the end of the day, those aren't my bikes. I want my bike back. And 2024, that's not really how I planned to go into 2024. I was hoping that I would have all my stuff working, but here we are. All of my vehicles are broken going into 2024, and it's kind of an eye-opener, not in a way of shock, but just... Actually, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but it just sucks. It sucks, going into this new year and being like, wow, everything I own is broken.
And welcome back from the future to the present, or in this case, reflect in you watching this the past. So, yeah, everything I own is a little broken right now. That's not exactly how I planned to come into 2024. You know, I at least want one of my vehicles to work, you know. But I'm genuinely not surprised. It's just how things go. But going into 2024, I am just very grateful, very thankful of my friends. Dare I consider my family. Just all these people that, you know, trust me on their motorcycles, for one, but just spending time with these people and, you know, getting to experience this with them, you know. I feel like there's some other words I want to use right now, but I'm also taking in the scenery, so I feel so good. I feel so rewarded right now. I'd feel a lot better on my bike as this story kind of goes. I'd be just a touch more happier on any of my vehicles if any of them worked, but don't let that diminish the fact that, you know, I'm very grateful for being able to ride friends' bikes, for being able to still participate in this stuff, because I'm a friend. I'm friends with all these lovely individuals, all these fantastic earthlings, and I'm really looking forward to whatever 2024 is going to hold, because it's only up from here, baby. I haven't hit my lowest, but I don't plan on sinking any lower than right now, so it's only up from here, baby. And I am along for the ride, as I'm doing right now, just along for this wonderful ride.